Well, hi everyone. I'm John Ritlin with a real-honest rant about the rise and fall of Asuka in WWE. And this might end up being a two-parter because I don't want to go way too long on a video. I want to do kind of bite-sized chunk stuff, but also I tend to get carried away when I'm passionate about something, like I'm passionate about Asuka, and no, that doesn't mean exactly like that, though I think she's a very charismatic, dynamic, funny, and very talented and very beautiful woman, and just great in the ring. She captivates you. You watch her, you want to see more of her. No, not like that. You want to see more of her in the ring. If you've seen any of her stuff as Kana before she came to WWE, she faced Minoru Suzuki and survived. I mean, right there, any person that can do that, man or woman, they can do that. You know, they're pretty goddamn tough. To stand up to Minoru Suzuki, who's a really tough guy in his own right, one of the toughest in wrestling, period, at least today. But with Asuka, all the hype in the goddamn world. They built her up well. Sure, there were some potholes and there was some stuff, but then they botched all that stuff just a number of months into her main roster run, and it's been an up and down, like journey ever since. It's been a pendulum. Sometimes it's good, and then sometimes it's complete shit. So I am a big fan of Asuka, so forgive me if I'm a little biased on this, but I would love to hear in the comments what you guys have to say. If you're a fan of Asuka, not a fan of Asuka, please let me know what you guys have to say. But without further ado, and this ends up being a two-parter, that's going to just make it more fun because maybe I can throw some rants in. So let's talk about when they signed her. Summer 2015, all the hype in the goddamn world. She was Kana, now she's Asuka. Both are good names, very marketable. And, they presented her well, they hyped her up well, and then, Regal brought her on to a segment on NXT TV. This is all the way back when it was taped. It seems so long ago. It's hard to believe after, nearly 5 years in WWE that Asuka's had the journey that she's had. And it's been, again, up and down. So she has a segment with Dana Brooke and Emma after they put Emma back in NXT after that failed run with Santino, because Santino doesn't like working with women or isn't very good at working with women. And women had to get over in spite of working with him, despite the fact that Beth Phoenix actually did pretty well with that, pretty much because Beth Phoenix kicked Santino's ass. But I digress. They did, they did something good with Emma. Dana Brooke being her protege. Sure, she was annoying, shouting a lot of stuff at ringside, but Dana was actually getting it. And then they called her up too soon and botched all that. But Dana was getting better. It's not going to turn into a video where I'm going to dump on Dana Brooke because she is improving incrementally, but she is improving, even if that's not a word. So they do the thing where it's like they slap Asuka. And Asuka just has that look like you don't know what you've done. And I had people send me some matches before that takeover respect match she had with Dana Brooke, whereas show me some matches that I should watch that Kana had. And I saw some, and I don't recall the opponents that she had because there's a lot of shit jumbled up here, guys, but I remember being very impressed. And I was like, okay, if she can even do half of that in WWE, then they're gonna have a goddamn gold mine. They're gonna have a freaking talent they can build around for a number of fucking years and not fuck it up. And then they fucked it up. The match with Dana Brooke was a get-over match, but Dana actually looked pretty good, and Asuka was able to carry her to a good match because Dana at that time was green and not really featured all that well, and it was good for what it was. Then they fudged with the undefeated streak a little bit, and I'm not going to get into too many details, but they had a couple battle royals and stuff like that, where Asuka was part of it and got eliminated or taken out. And it's like, technically, if you were taken out of a battle royal and you don't win it, it counts as a loss. So they just kind of ignored that stuff. Whatever. WCW fudged the whole thing with Goldberg's streak where he's 175 million and 0. So 173 and 0, actually, is what I think it was. 173, 174. But anyway, I do recall that instead of having Asuka maybe hotshot to face Bayley and then them doing some dodgy finish, they had Eva Marie wrestle Bayley, which was a goddamn travesty. It was so goddamn bad. That was so bad. You had Asuka with all this hype and everything, and you could have done something and messed with it, and they didn't do that. But they made up for it by having Emma versus Asuka at TakeOver London. An incredible match. And Emma, so many people forget, myself included, because they, marginalized her so much, even after that great match she had with Paige at TakeOver Arrival. And I'm calling it TakeOver Arrival because it may not have been the first TakeOver in name, but it was the first TakeOver in theme. And that match was great. You did have Dana Gain involved, and sure, there was a little bit of that. But Emma, incredible wrestler, especially when she was allowed to be in WWE, and still doing some good stuff outside of it. Do not get me wrong. Even with some of the health issues she has, it's horrible she's having to go through that, and it's good she's pushing through that. And she is somebody that boy, a big company should try signing. But anyway, this was a great match. It was very well wrestled. These two women went out. The London crowd really helped, but these two women cut a really good goddamn pace. It was given well over 10 minutes. I think it was given like 15. Or at least it seemed like it. It didn't feel like it went long, but it felt like they gave them enough time. And then Asuka beat Emma. So Asuka's on this friggin' undefeated streak. Asuka's doing some good stuff. Building up, they eventually build up her and Bayley after Bayley had beaten Sasha Banks to take over Brooklyn 1 in one of the best one of the best matches the WWE's put on in that decade, in my personal opinion, and easily one of the best women's matches ever, at least on a big stage like that. On a big main stage, and anyway, they had a great match, and then you had Bayley and Asuka, they were going to clash to take over Dallas. And then you had Asuka beat Bayley. And the thought was, okay, Bayley's going to be called up. Oh, no, they didn't quite do that. They had, they kind of botched all that. That's another story for another day. But they had Asuka as champion. Understandable. You didn't want Bayley to beat her. Bayley had gone as far as she could with the championship, and it was time to not necessarily move her down the card, but get her ready and then have her go to the main roster. And Asuka was going to be the person. And I thought Asuka might hold it for 6 months or a year. I didn't think she was going to hold on to it for over a year. She beats Nia, take over the end. Carrying Nia to a match at that point was a task in itself, and she did it. It wasn't great, but it was what it was. It was pretty good for what it was. But Asuka mainly making Nia look way more dominant than she ever could. It's actually kind of funny. I think back to like months. I think it was months ago. I think it was at TakeOver London where it was Nia versus Bayley, and that wasn't all that good. But we then get to, she had TV matches on occasion and stuff, but not championship matches. I'm going to get into that here in a little bit in 2017. But Bayley, she beat Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn 2, Electric Boogaloo. And okay, that was a pretty damn big deal. We're heating Asuka up and everything. This is going to be really fucking good. And then they kind of ran out of opponents for her because, let's be honest, and I love Asuka. Do not get me wrong. I'm glad she held the championship for a long time. But by about January, it started to become the Asuka problem. Like, she smashed everybody. They smashed her over everybody. And no, I don't mean that. She smashed all the other women. As much as I would have liked to have seen that in some respects, I digress. It was getting to where it's like, okay, she's all the way up here, and you got all these women down below that just can't do anything. Because, yes, they are good athletes, or even great athletes in the case of a lot of them, and some of them are up-and-comers, and you can build them up, but then they just get knocked right back down by Asuka. They kind of started to turn Asuka a little bit, in 2017, but before that, go back to November 2016. They had Mickie James come back. Mickie James versus Asuka was a good match. It had some great moments, but it was just overall a good match. But Mickie had not been in WWE for a while. Now, she had a hell of a career, working in Impact, having some of her best matches for a number of years. Nobody can take that away from her, except for the whole train incident where James Storm pushed her onto a train, or onto some train tracks, and we heard the train coming. It was stupid. It was fucking stupid. As much as I like James Storm, that was a stupid storyline. But anyway, this was, that was good. It was nice to, get somebody kind of bridge between, beating Bayley and heat some other people up that she could face, that Asuka could face. Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, and Nikki Cross at TakeOver San Antonio. One of the lesser takeovers, and not because of the women's match, even though they kind of really give them a whole lot of time. You had a good mix of people. Peyton and Billie weren't being featured as much, which is a shame, because Peyton and Billie, as far as like being good heels and cocky heels and chicken shit heels with some good ability, Peyton maybe a little bit more than Billie, they complemented each other well, and it was like the numbers game and all that stuff. So there was some good storyline work. Overall, this match just ended up being okay, but all right, we had that happen. We had that match happen, and now it was time to really heat somebody up. And you got Ember Moon involved. And then a TakeOver Orlando, and you're thinking, okay, Ember Moon's going to be the one to beat her, because Asuka's basically held the championship for just about a year. It's about time we give it to somebody else. They didn't do that. They had Ember Moon lose. Okay, bit weird. This is about the tipping point for the Asuka streak. where I started to have some issues with how they were booking her. And I love Asuka, and I'm not even blaming her. I'm blaming the booking, because Triple H is always, or whoever. It may not even be Triple H. Maybe somebody else. Maybe they're having different people book different divisions, like in AEW, because it's working out so well there. In some respects, it is not the women's division. That's another story for another day. This is about the point where I started to have a problem with Asuka's championship run. I'm like, okay, now it's getting ridiculous. Like, sure, when Goldberg had the championship, he only had it for like, what, five and a half. He had it for almost 6 months. Because he had it from about July 4th, 1998. Or, no, July 6th, I believe. He had it from there and then lost it near the end of December. So had he actually, not had the cattle prod put into him and they had been smart about it, but WCW, run by idiots, run by motherfucking idiots, and run by people that did not know how to book anything by that point, they ruined that. Thankfully, WWE didn't necessarily ruin Asuka's championship run until about here. Because then it got, okay, she had to do some stuff to beat Ember, because Ember, had an answer for her, that Eclipse, which Ember is going to, and I don't know when Ember is going to come back to the ring, but Ember is going to need to come up with something other than the Eclipse, because her hips and her freaking spine are going to hate her in about 10 years. It's a spectacular move, do not get me wrong, but I hope she comes up with something else. So, moving on from that, after Ember lost, that's when the fans started to sour. That's when I started to sour on. Not sour on Asuka necessarily, but I started to sour on. It's like, that wasn't the fall. She was still rising, but that was the fall of her being perceived where, okay, now it's the Asuka problem. This is where it's the issue. And Ember was probably supposed to win it at TakeOver Chicago. The problem is Ember got injured because they did the spot where Ember got her shoulder hurt. Which would be a recurring theme, unfortunately. I forget if it was her shoulder or her elbow that she got injured in the Royal Rumble last year. But she was supposed to do that, so instead they had, because it was supposed to be a 4-way, but it turned into a 3-way. Ruby Riott and Nikki Cross is before they added 2 T's to Ruby Riott's name, I believe. Because I think they had 2 T's on when she was on the main roster. So, Nikki Cross and Ruby Riott, 2 incredible talents. Nikki Storm and Heidi Lovelace on the Indies. And I'm not, when I say on the Indies, I don't mean to knock. I'm not knocking. I love some of my best friends are on the Indies. No, some of the best people that I've met have been from indie shows, from bigger stars that have been brought into some promotions. I met Jeff Cobb a couple times, and he's a great guy. But seeing how these women cut their teeth and did so well, they got up to the stage. This could have been a good match, and probably should have been, had Ember not gotten injured, Ember probably would have won here. Asuka would have tried for the double pin. She ended up double pinning Ruby and Nikki on, on top of each other, which is weird. Well, she actually ended up pinning both of them, and it was odd. But Ember might have won there. Had Ember won there, maybe it would have been different. But then we wouldn't have gotten the last woman standing match, and it was the first ever last woman standing match that they said between Charlotte and Becky at Evolution 2018. Fucking bullshit. Asuka and Nikki Cross did it first. Or at least, on this scale. I can't remember if Trish and Victoria did that. They might have been Falls Count Anywhere. But, moving on. Nikki and Asuka. Great women's match they had on NXT TV. They had the Superflex spot, they had the announcer's table spot, they had a whole bunch of stuff, and Asuka managed to win, and Nikki, looking like a crazy force, that finally just was kept down, and Asuka won by the skin of her teeth. That was some good stuff. So you got that match out of it. Again, it does go back to Ember getting injured. Had Ember not gotten injured, you could have had Asuka versus Nikki in a number 1 contenders match or something, because then we go to Asuka and Ember at TakeOver Brooklyn 3, the rematch, and she kind of cheats and does some stuff and everything, and apparently hurts her collarbone, has a slight break, a fracture or something, and she beats Ember, and then that's where the air was let out of the goddamn balloon, because now it's like, okay, now Ember doesn't mean anything. Now it's like, okay, you had all this hype built, and now Ember can't beat her. And then that's where everything just went out of the goddamn, the wind was out of the sails, everything. The women's division since then has not meant as much. Now, there have been some good champions, do not get me wrong. Shayna's run was, Ember winning finally was fine. Shayna's run was fine. Her two runs, her second run did get a little bit drawn out. Kairi Sane did, had it for like the amount of time it takes me to take an energy drink in, so 5 minutes. Maybe I can last 5 minutes, but moving on. Rhea Ripley had her and all this stuff, and then Charlotte won the championship because there may have been work visa issues or not, or maybe they just panicked. Who the fuck knows? So going back to this whole thing where Asuka had beaten Ember. Ember then, okay, we have this, and where Ember's beaten down, everybody's beaten down. Asuka had to relinquish the championship, and she got either her surgery or something to fix it, and she had to rehab and all that stuff, and she got eventually called up to Raw. Cool, okay. And then what they did, and just I'll get back to Asuka here in a second, but what they did is they had a women's, qualifier or a fatal four-way or whatever, and it was Ember, Kairi, Peyton, and Billy, I think. I know Peyton was involved. It might have been Nikki Cross was involved. I don't quite remember. I know Ember was involved, Kairi Sane was involved, and Peyton was involved. Forgive me if I forget who the other person was. It was either Billy or Nikki Cross. So what happened is they did that, and then Asuka presented the championship to Ember. Like, hey, you couldn't beat me these 2 times and everything, and I had to leave because I was injured, but here's the championship. You're second class. See ya. I mean, and not that Asuka was presenting her like that, but that's how they present Ember. It's like, hey, you're second class. You're second place. You couldn't beat our top person, but now that she's gone, we're going to give you the championship, and then we're going to give you one of the limpest championship runs ever. Eventually, I may do a retrospective on the NXT Women's Championship and just talk about that, but moving on. So we go back to what Asuka did after she rehabbed and everything and recovered from her collarbone injury. She faced Emma at No Mercy 2017. Great match, and then it ended up being happening that Emma left. Was either asked for her release or something, and then Lio Rush said, "I guess that's what happens when you're not ready for Asuka." And stupid to say, but you know what? It's been a few years. Has he said anything stupid? Has he said much stupid on social media besides a few things? Yeah, he has. He's also an immature jackass. And if he's learned, then maybe I'd be willing to forgive him. Maybe. But it was a dumb thing to say at that time. So, we then, do all this stuff. She's on TV a little more and stuff like that because Raw is more to a worldwide audience since NXT was still taped at the time. She she is part of Team Raw at Survivor Series 2017 and is the sole survivor. Holy shit, they're actually doing something with Asuka. They haven't fucked it up yet. Fans are getting all excited. They're getting all excited. What in the world's going on? Da da da. Well, okay. Then they really fucked it up. Because after winning the Women's Royal Rumble 2018, which was a great match, in all seriousness, even with the Bellas involved at the end, which was fucking bullshit, they shouldn't have been involved, but Asuka won. And then Ronda came out and just kind of undercut all that stuff, but that was by design from the booking. And then she decides to pick to face Charlotte at Mania 34. Now, this is probably where I'm going to end this video, and then I'm going to talk about the rest of it at some point, but what happened is they had all this where it's like, oh, Asuka, nobody's ready for Asuka, all that stuff, nobody's ready for Asuka. The match was great at Mania 34. I talked about the match plenty of times, so I'm not going to talk about the match as much, but to say except it should have been a little bit higher on the goddamn card, because these women fucking killed it. The problem is, like a lot of Charlotte matches, it was the wrong motherfucking result. Charlotte has lost at Mania before. Like, not disputing that. But this is where she shouldn't have won. Where she shouldn't have won. And I'll tell you why she shouldn't have won. Charlotte was already going to be in the mix, be established, and all that. This is immediately where it became the Charlotte problem. And I actually did a video about the WWE Charlotte Flair problem. You check that out if you want. A lot of you have, and a lot of you have given feedback, and I appreciate it. With this, when Asuka lost, all it did was highlight that Vince wasn't willing to go all the way with something he didn't create. Because Asuka already had this character, this gimmick, whatever you want to call it, this persona. Not Persona 5 or any of that. She already had this well established before she came to WWE. WWE helped enhance it because they are a worldwide promotion and they were doing all this, all the marketing and all that. And yes, it got bungled because of the broken collarbone and stuff like that, and her not dropping the title to Ember and then taking time off and keeping this undefeated streak going when it kind of got muddied. But if you're going to keep the undefeated streak going, have Asuka win at Mania. They didn't have Asuka win at Mania, and it basically slapped everybody in the goddamn motherfucking face. And that's what was annoying to me, because slapping, the fans in the face, fans did not want to see that. Now, there are some that liked it, and that's fine if you guys liked it. That's totally cool. But to me, all it did was highlight that Vince wasn't willing to go in with somebody that he did not help create. And I guess he just didn't think that Asuka would be appealing. So I didn't quite understand that. But that pretty much wrecked Asuka right there. Unfortunately, it would only get a whole lot worse. So I'm going to stop the video right there, guys. I would love to know what you guys think in the comments. Part 2 will be coming very soon after this, because it would be hard to do part 2 then part 1, because you get really confused. We're not doing any of this weird timeline, Inception bullshit. Anyway, I digress. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.